Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we get started, are you thinking of creating a podcast or are you a podcast host already? As a podcast strategist, I can help you to launch or relaunch a purposeful and profitable podcast which will inspire, entertain and educate a global audience. Simply book in a one-to-one call with me right now via the Calendly link in the show notes, and together we'll focus on the purpose of your podcast. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Sarah Jane Adams. SJ, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, we have the lovely Kim Huggins to thank for recommending that we get together and record this episode.
We do. Big love to Kim.
Oh, so what is it that you're doing at the moment?
What am I not doing is probably more the question. My main role is that I'm a mama. My daughter Annabelle is 3.5. Not quite sure how she's got to that age, but it's flying past. I've also got a few businesses. My focus, my heart space is in my business mentoring. And that is where I work with people that are looking to push the benchmark within whatever industry they're operating in. Through that, I met my business partner, Dee, and we opened a coffee shop and laundrette, Laundry and Latte, in October 21. Then more recently, last May, was it last May or this May, we set up one of my friend's clients, again, a space for parents in business to talk about the juggle, to humanise that juggle. Because not enough is talked about around that. You have two very distinct babies and you always feel guilty about one of them or you're not doing enough. And more latterly, I've just recently come the other side of a divorce. I've started working with a lady that works primarily with women, but also with men, to give emotional support to people going through that. And my feeling, my experience of divorce and the key parties involved, the lawyers, it's not human enough. They need to understand. It's good. I'm pleased that none of them have been through a divorce or any other ones that I've been through. But I talked to, but it didn't make them emotionally. It didn't make them empathic or sympathetic. So it's a big thing for me to go back into the corporate world, which is where I started, and help make that process easier. So that's kind of my more latter project. And I'm already bubbling about with other things. So lots of stuff. Like I said, what am I not doing?
And what I want to sort of really pull on the thread that you mentioned about humanising the juggle. And I love that as a phrase, but more to what it's representing and how life is a juggle. And the two very distinct babies that we have, the business and our actual children, that we're feeling guilty if we're not spending time with one or the other. So let's ask you to sort of share more about what humanising the juggle means.
First and foremost, for me, it is about saying and being able to say, being a parent, being a mother is my prime role, and that not detracting in any way from the power that you bring to business. So whether you're a businessman, you're a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, which is how I identify, that doesn't detract from that, because being a parent comes first. And there is so much rhetoric that currently dictates that it does. Because when you choose to be a parent, that should come first. Why would it not? And everything kind of falls around that. But that for me, that instant thing of allowing yourself to, I know when I was in the corporate world, it just wasn't, you just couldn't say that. You couldn't say, do you know what? My child comes first. Because that would mean that you weren't serious about what you were doing. And that kind of, for me, was the hub I said, we need to change something here, because I know I'm a powerhouse in business, but my daughter comes first.
And often when something happens, there's a family incident and you need to leave work early. The first thing that people say to you is absolutely family comes first. But that's what another individual says to you. That's not the business. I mean, the business is a made up entity, isn't it? It's a collective thought that then comes and then dehumanizes the individual approach.
Yeah, and often that's because those individuals have unfortunately had unsympathetic employers previously. So therefore, they then feel resentful if someone else is being supported in a way that they weren't. I think that kind of is a key. It is kind of key where it comes from. But I have a team now, and it is about not just saying family come first and it sounding good. It's about it genuinely meaning that, and the business flexing around that. And that is possible, and that can be challenging, but it is possible. And it depends if you want happy and committed employees, team members, or the people the people feel valued by you. And a big part of that is that you having an understanding of their life and their family.
And what I heard when you first introduced yourself was very much upfront and center was that you were a mama. And then you mentioned that you had your few businesses and you do business mentoring. So even in your way that you present yourself, it is family first.
Yeah, I guess I don't really think of it like that. It's just Annabelle is always going to come first. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing is for hers, to show her that she can do whatever she wants. But she is everything. The life that I'm curating is to enable me to have more time with her. Yeah, she is everything. But like I said, it also doesn't dim the power I bring to business. So, and I know that, and I own that unapologetically.
So knowing that and owning that, what difference does it make for you in the way that you operate on a day-to-day basis?
What do you mean, knowing and owning that Annabelle comes first and how I operate
Yeah,
within
that you
business?
are very clear with your boundaries.
It means that I never apologise if I'm with my daughter and I can't get back to somebody, or if I'm getting back to somebody the day after. So I don't. My mummy days are Wednesdays and Fridays, and if I'm getting back to someone, I will never apologise for it being late because I'm with my daughter, and that for me is, yeah, I have to. I think it was, again. It's so ingrained to apologise. I had to initially really ebb myself out of not doing that. But that's my first thing. Never apologise, Annabelle. If I'm with Annabelle, and it doesn't mean. And don't get me wrong. Of course, I still pick up calls, and I'm still probably on my phone more than I'd like to be. That's life, and again, I can't feel guilty about that. Obviously, I do feel guilty about that, but I will never apologise for being a mother, and not being available to speak business if I'm with her.
I just remembered one of my previous guests shared the traumatic event of her daughter picking up her phone and throwing it across the room because she didn't have the attention from her mum. And I get it.
When Annabelle was 2, last summer, she said to me, "Mummy, stop working. It will make you ill." That hit home.
2 years old.
And I took the rest of the month. I took the rest of the month off.
It's so interesting, isn't it? How the child is often the mentor. I was talking about this in a recent podcast again with Thomas Kauke, and he was sharing how his 8-year-old son is his mentor and is teaching him so much about life. And it is that lens of being able to see very clearly what priorities are.
I believe, I'm a big believer that our children are our greatest teachers. They put a mirror up to us, and they make us look at our behaviour, think about our behaviour, think about how that affects others, and primarily them. And it's about whether the parent steps up, and it really is about whether the parent steps up and chooses to take responsibility. We are pivotal in the programs that we pass on to our children, how they perceive, how they understand the world, how they move in the world. And that's why when I say everything I kind of do is around kind of teaching Annabelle that she doesn't have to follow the status quo. She doesn't have to follow the mentality of life is a slog. I always remember that when I was in the city. Life's a slog. I remember my mum saying it to me. It's just something we've got to accept. And when I crashed and burned out of the city, which I did at the back end of 17, I was like, no, I'm going to commit to that. That's not the way I'm going to roll now. I am going to find the joy, because life's too short. And yeah, our children are our greatest gift, and they give us, obviously they look to us for security, but actually they give us an anchor in life that we couldn't possibly get anywhere else.
And anyone who's listening, Sarah, Jane, what is it that, I mean, if they're not a parent themselves and they're thinking, well, I don't have this need to balance my life like this. What I'm thinking is almost taking yourself back to being the child and using those lessons from your own childhood. It doesn't have to be that you are a parent yourself, that you can take on board these wise and beautiful, unfiltered perspectives.
I think, I mean, I can still remember life before Annabelle, even though it feels like a lot longer ago than it is. But it's about, it's about choosing. I think when we roll in a society where we just kind of constantly rehashing the same thought processes, and often that is rehashing and justifying the limitations that we put on ourselves and others, we unempower ourselves. We become very stuck in our thinking, in our processing, and in our view of the world. And it's those childlike eyes that say exactly what you've just said. Why does it have to be that way? We don't question it. We just go with it. And it is that stepping back and with or without a child. What am I? And that was when I crashed and burned out the city. I'd flirted with being in business for years. I was always a breadwinner, and walking away from a salary was petrifying. And it was never something I was brave enough to do until I was in a role that made me incredibly unwell mentally. I was in a dark place when I crashed and burned out there in 17. And it was literally me sitting there and saying, Sarah Jane, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, are you going to regret not trying something new, not pursuing your dreams? And it's sad that it has to be that blunt and that kind of a horrible way of thinking about it. But it literally was that I had to shake myself out of this very much feeling of a predetermined view of kind of what my life was going to be, or what it had to be, or what it had to feel like, for me to kind of sit up and say, no, this isn't what it has to be.
So let's have a look at some of those questions and the status quo. And for you, what I want to ask and dive into is the purpose piece, in terms of what questions are you now asking yourself that you hadn't before?
What brings me joy? Because that gets you through the hardest days. And for the people that are listening that are in business, or if they're thinking about going into business, you have to be doing something that brings you joy, that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. It cannot be chasing money, because the appeal of that dies. It fades. And so for me, it was what am I doing? What can I do that feels right? When I left the city, I found spirituality. I began to meditate, and it allowed me to connect with myself. I've always been someone that thought I understood myself quite well, but that afforded me a new opportunity to look at myself in a new perspective, kind of emerging from this darkness. So it was about understanding who I was and what I really brought, without the limitations others put on me, or what I should say, without me allowing others to put limitations on me. So it's always been about what my thing when I work with people in mentoring, Amy, it is my role is to carve out what their purpose is. I believe everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a gift, this innate gift that that allows them to work with ease in flow, that creates abundance in their lives. One of those things is money, yes, but the other is joy. And that is pivotal to how I work with people, is allowing people to understand what they bring. What's the special stuff that they bring that no one else does? Because everybody does bring something differently.
And tell me, what is it that you bring?
What do I bring? It genuinely, it's that ability to tap into somebody's intuition, to tap into somebody intuitively, to chip away at the facade, to chip away at their perceptions of themselves. And for them to understand, I kind of hold that mirror up. But we're talking about children. I hold that mirror up and allow them to see who they are, and to celebrate themselves, and to give them permission to be who they are, and to do business how they want to do it, to live a life that is successful how they deem success to look. And that is my gift. And then obviously on from that, I help them build a business around that.
And you mentioned just then that you had great self-awareness, that you always understood yourself quite well. And yet when you went into more meditation and spirituality, you took it to another level. And I just wanted to understand who it was that you then saw and what you could bring, and what limitations you discarded.
I discarded all limitations. I chose, and it is a choice, to believe in myself. I choose still to believe that when this isn't mean to sound arrogant, but when I go into a room, I don't believe anyone in there is better than me. I don't believe anyone is better than anyone else. But I will go in now with a belief that I can bring. I can bring, and I know my power, and I own my power. And again, for women, it's not something we do well. We always feel like we have to then justify that with something else. So yeah, it was about me freeing myself from limitations. And to be honest, I still feel like I've only just started, Amy. I'm only just ramping up. And that is as I'm kind of just discarding these programs that I've had, and yeah, that I've learned from my parents. These huge things that you have to overcome, and still overcoming. Yeah, I've got this self-awareness. Yesterday I had a day, people always tell you you're a positive Patty. I am most of the time, but equally some days I'm feeling muted, and it's about allowing yourself to feel like that, to kind of push through it and understand why you feel it. Again, giving yourself permission to feel, to heal, to move forward. And this is all the stuff that seems so simple and so obvious, but we don't do.
And you spoke there about the programs and what you've taken on board from your parents as a child, and that those formative years, those 0 to 7, those imprinting years are so important. And as a parent, you don't necessarily realize quite what the child is taking on board, what they're taking as truth, what they're believing to be the case, because they don't have any ability to challenge what's going on. They don't have that the thinking, the critical thinking piece until past that age, till from age 8 onwards. So everything that you sort of learned and built belief systems and ways of being, you then have to sort of look at and unravel. And we just don't tend to do that. We just let them sit there and then realize when we've got a limitation or a limiting belief, you go, wow, that's interesting. That's come from a long, long time ago.
Yeah, I remember I read somewhere that toddlers are told no up to 300 times a day. And when Annabelle was born, I was like, I don't want to say no to her, and I don't. I do sometimes, don't get me wrong, but I always look to explain rather than say no, because the piece that I read about it is that how would you feel in a job if someone told you no 300 times a day? No, don't do that, without explaining why. And it's small things like that, or just when they say something, when they say something that is silly, not saying, well, that's silly, but saying that's an interesting viewpoint. It's such subtle things that can make such a huge impact. That we can all think back, can't we? And we have these memories that really impacted us. I was speaking to one of my team the other day. I remember I wanted to do GCSE art, and the teacher's telling me I wasn't good enough. So from that moment on, I didn't think I was a creative person in any respect, which is utter rubbish. No, I'm not a good artist. I'm terrible. Terrible. But in other aspects, I'm incredibly creative. And it's those real throwaway things that can just sit and fester.
I totally agree. It's separating out the action from the adjective. Instead of saying, you're silly, you say that's a silly thing to do. So you're not associating it with the person themselves. And it's simple. It's a phrase of language difference. That's it. But the impact can, as you've just demonstrated, go on for decades if not practiced well.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
My children are older now. They are 20 and 18. And yes, there are probably lots of things that I now know that I didn't know then. But one thing that I do recognize that both my husband and I very much did was we always had time for the questions that they were asking when they were little. And it wasn't just a bat off just because, or just to keep them quiet. It was a case of, no, you've brought these children in the world, take the effort to explain things about as you just were, but also to ask them what they thought. Because quite often they would ask a question, they would probably have an answer already. So my husband he was very good at this. And if they were asking something, he would say, so why do you think that is the way? Because then it opened up a much better discussion. Instead of just giving the answer, it was asking them and reinforcing them, but allowing them that space to be able to share what they had. And yeah, we got that bit right for sure.
Well, that's one of the key lessons, isn't it? That anyone needs it, and that is that we have a voice.
Yeah.
And that right there is the beginnings of allowing that. And when we feel as though we have a voice, that's powerful right there.
And it is a case of knowing that you're not going to get everything right and explaining. We've always been very open with our children from a very early age. Always encourage them to be incredibly independent as well, which I think is so important. And it clearly comes through that you're doing the same with your daughter, with Annabelle, because she's able to share her thoughts and tell you from the age of 2 that you're working too hard, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, she's incredible. But the other big thing is, what parents don't do is apologise. It's like, again, what you the other day I said, I'm sorry, Annabelle, I'm tired, I'm grumpy, and I've been grumpy today. Teaching them to responsibility. Yeah, I mean, it's very small things, but they make a big difference about in allowing them. It's not even creating, it's allowing them to become the rounded person that we would hope they become.
And with that, you also just shared that it's okay to explore and to exhibit emotion, to share, this is what's happening, this is how I'm feeling, and connecting the two so that, they're very much aware of what's going on. I remember having a discussion with one of my friends when the kids were very little. They must have been less than 2 or 3, maybe 4. And she was very adamant that she never wanted to argue in front of her children. And I said, I don't think that's right. I'm not going to hide arguments, because I need my children to see what the argument was about and how we resolve it. Because if they don't see the whole thing, they don't understand what's going on. And it was really interesting just to see, and neither way, and I'm not saying her way was right, my way was wrong, or the other way around, and my way was right and hers was wrong. But I just feel that there are so many different ways that you can do this. But I do believe in as you just shared, in sharing emotion and sharing being a human effectively.
And that it's okay to be emotional, you know. I think you do it from a good place. You're trying to protect your children, as like being a single parent, going through the last, like I said, 18 months. There were many times where Annabelle saw me cry, and I don't. And she was huge. Like I know she was affected by it, and she, but she has to see mummy cry. And it's also in business as well. You have to be, and I always really bang this drum before being a mummy, was that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to get up and say, I'm bloody struggling with this today. I'm not enjoying what I'm doing today. And when Annabelle was in my belly, when I was pregnant, I wrote a book about it. It's called Bringing Human Back: How to Be More Successful in Business by Being You. And that was all about empowering the person behind the business and not feeling as though they needed to show up in any sort of way that wasn't true to themselves. And it was about being human. It was about being themselves and saying that is okay. Whipping down a facade. We live in a world of social media now where everything looks perfect and beautiful all of the time, and no one has terrible days, and it's rubbish, and it's not real life, and it's not inspiring, and it's not motivating. So it's about that, showing that emotion to everyone, whether that's in a bloody business meeting. I presented recently and got emotional, and that's okay. I'll own that. I want people to see that side of me. It's important. It tells them a lot about who I am, and similarly, my daughter.
And one of the expressions, the phrases you used right at the beginning was heart space. And it was in relation to the business mentoring. You said that is my heart space. And yet I feel like there's more that's in your heart space.
Yeah, there's lots of things. I feel like I've been sent here to put right, or at least try and give a voice to. Try and give a voice to people that maybe don't feel like they've got the strength to fight.
So share with me the people that you're trying to help, and to the reason why you feel that you've been sent here to put right.
I think if I'm just looking solely at the mentoring, the people that are the best at what they do, because it is so innate with them, because it comes so freely, so easily, are the ones that overlook their gifts the most, overlook the beauty, the power of their gifts. And like I said, when I start working with people, it's about chipping away. It's about people seeing themselves, me helping them see themselves for who they are, for the incredible things that they bring and that they can bring. And it is always, 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 always the people that are the best that struggle to do that the most. The people that are really going to change things, change industries. And I have been blessed to work across industry, from tattooists to financial advisors to expert witnesses, to lots of different types of lawyers, to accountants, to everybody. Really, a lot of different people. The people that are the ones that say this needs to change, and I feel like intuitively it needs to change, but they question themselves because nobody else is doing it. For me, it's about giving them the permission, giving them the voice, reminding them that they can pursue what they have the gift to pursue. That's my purpose.
And when was it that you gave yourself permission to do this work?
It was when I started in business, I always knew, I've always been brought up around business. In the city, I was doing business strategy for a big professional services firm. So I always knew I thought quite commercially. It was bred into me, shall we say. But the spiritual side, the intuitive side, the stuff that allows me to dig deeper into people, and that's something that kind of came after I started. And it was something that I did, but I didn't really realise I was doing it. And it's still something I really struggle to explain because they're very different applications. You know, to work intuitively and actually still be able to be a figures person and commercially build businesses that work financially. They're very different. I've never met anyone that does what I do. And unfortunately, we live in a world of labels, don't we, Amy? So one feels like you have to give yourself a label in order to sell yourself. And I've never found one that really works for me, but I'm cool with that now. I'm just me. Just
it's
me.
so funny you say that because I've literally just written the commercial spiritualist. It's like giving you a label.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, because it just packages it up for me. In terms of absolutely, you know, it brings those two worlds together. And it's such a beautiful space that you're working in. I mean, obviously we both talk about purpose. We're both working with people, helping them to see their purpose. I love it. It's just who I am. And I can see that it's just who you are. And often on the show, I have people who understand purpose, who understand because they've got a mission, they've got a vision, they understand mostly because they've had some kind of event, a trauma or a catalyst that has really helped to spearhead a specific moment for them that they then take into a purpose-driven focus. And again, here you've clearly had a couple of events that have really helped to crystallize that for you. It's been a case of the burnout, but also the divorce and the understanding of becoming a parent have all come together and really helped you to define who you now are and what you want to do. And it's incredible. So yeah, hats off to you, SJ.
Thank you. It means a lot.
So tell me, how would people get in contact with you? They want to connect. What's the best way for them to reach out?
What's the best way for someone to reach out? Drop me an email, sj@meow, MEOW consulting.co.uk, or follow me on Instagram, which is the handle is @the-entrepreneur-whisperer. I'm always open to having a chat with people that are looking to harness that gift and start a business, change their life, create a life that is limitless.
So is the Entrepreneur Whisperer not your label?
I think, you know, when I started in business, and I don't know if you felt the same, so Meow Consulting was all about, and I'm going to tell you this quickly because I worked within marketing as well as business development. The domestic cat meows because they've recognised that we don't speak in body language like they ordinarily would. They've adapted their way of communicating because we vocalise. So for me, it was about adapting their language to get attention. And in business, that's pivotal. And so that was what the meow was about. The Entrepreneur Whisperer is I do feel like I speak, you know, yeah, I mean, there is a lot of meaning and layers to that. But when I started, I kind of feel like I don't know, you have to give yourself a label and you can't stand up as who you are. And I've literally recently bought a URL, which is Sarah Jane Adams, because I am just me. And we can't hide. I'm not going to hide behind names anymore. That is going to be my label is me. That's a good way to finish. That's a good way.
Absolutely. I love it. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing why you do what you do and why you are who you are. It has been a beautiful conversation. I really look forward to pulling on a few strands in my reflections episode later. Have you got some final words, please, for the audience, SJ?
I do have some final words. Remember, we always have a choice. We have a choice how we deal with things. And whilst we may not be able to control what goes on, we can control how we deal with it, how we choose to deal with it. We always have a choice.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What value have you received from tuning in? What are your reflections with actions? Please take a moment to leave me an Apple Podcast or Spotify review sharing how Focus on Why has made a difference to you today. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. To keep it going, simply connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, or join the Focus on Why Facebook group. All the links are in the show notes. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.